Hi guys, welcome to the JavaScript course. Now in this video, we're going to get set up for the course. To get set up for the course, I need you to Google Visual Studio Code, go to the website, and download the relevant build for your operating system. We're going to be using this code editor in this course. If you want to use other code editors and you're familiar with those, that is fine as well. Once you have it open, once you've downloaded it, open up Visual Studio Code. It should look something like this. And I want you to go ahead and open a folder for this course. So I created this JavaScript course folder. So I'm going to go ahead and open that. And once you open that, it should be completely empty. And that's really it. In future videos, we'll be using this folder and Visual Studio Code to learn this JavaScript masterclass. See you then. Bye. This course is a hands-on course, and I promise that we will write a ton of code in this course to learn all about JavaScript. Before that though, let's talk about JavaScript theoretically. Now, I'm not a theoretical person, but I'm sure this will be very helpful for anyone interested in learning JavaScript or even for experts. It will make you sound smart when talking about the language, and you'll be regarded highly as a developer if you can regurgitate knowledge like this. JavaScript was initially created to make web pages alive. The programs in this language are basically basically called scripts. They can be written in a web page's HTML and run automatically as the page loads. In essence, when you want to interact with a web page, you will need JavaScript. JavaScript also can be thought of as enabling a web page's interactivity. Initially, it's created as a browser-only language, but now it is used in many other environments as well. Today, JavaScript has a unique position as the most widely adopted browser language, fully integrated with HTML or CSS. Now, I think there's another point is that it's the only scripting language that can run directly in the browser, and therefore it is far and away the most widely adopted. Another thing to understand about JavaScript is that you can create UI with JavaScript, okay, which is why it's so powerful as a language. It's very visual. It's great for beginners because you will really understand coding by building projects in JavaScript. There are many languages that get transpiled to JavaScript and provide certain features, but we will not be covering them in this course. But it's great to learn JavaScript as a starting point because other languages will get transpiled to JavaScript eventually, and if you want to use them in the browser, they basically just get transpiled to JavaScript. Now, it is also recommended to take a look at these languages, at least briefly, after mastering JavaScript. Now, if you're not very familiar with HTML or CSS, please sign up for my other courses on HTML and CSS, which will guide you through the essentials that are necessary, and that will be very helpful in helping you learn JavaScript better. However, this course does focus extensively on JavaScript, and by the end of this course, you will be a JavaScript master. You'll never fear anything to do with JavaScript again. You'll be completely safe in any JavaScript developer environment, never having to worry about your proficiency in this language. You'll also be the kind of JavaScript developer that people will come up to and ask questions for because you will just understand the language so super well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi guys. Now to continue on, now we're in this folder. So this folder is the folder we set up in the very first video of the course, and this folder has nothing or should have nothing for you. And now you're gonna have to create a file called index.html. This file is the file that we will use to run our JavaScript code in. So it's an HTML file, and what I'm gonna need you to do is declare that it's an HTML file with doc type. Create an HTML tag. So basically this is some HTML boilerplate. We don't need a header for this, so just create a body. And now, just to be clear, this is an HTML file, and this is the HTML tag, and this is the body tag. and this is what goes on and is displayed inside the web page. Now just create a paragraph, so p tag before the script dot dot dot, as well as a p tag, and we're going to write after the script. So what's going on here is that we've not written any JavaScript yet, and we've just created some HTML, and this is so-called the setup for the course. And now what we're going to do is we're going to open up that is index.html file by clicking on it, and it should open up in the browser, whatever browser you're using. Now what we're going to do is we're going to implement some JavaScript here. So you're going to write your first lines of JavaScript code if that's what's going on for you, but if not, just write it. And we're going to need a pair of script tags, and this is all you need really to embed JavaScript in HTML. So go alert and write hello world, and now when you refresh the page, you should get this alert, and it should have the text that's written here. Congratulations, you have written hello world in JavaScript. When you refresh the page, that's when the alert happens, and you have to click it. Click OK to basically refresh the page. Now, a few things to keep in mind. The script tag has a few attributes that are rarely used nowadays but can be found in old code. These are things like type, right? But in HTML5, you don't really need to have the word type tag / JavaScript. And there's also the language attribute. It's meant to show the language of the script, but it no longer makes sense because JavaScript is the default language, so it's not needed. So just type that might be required in HTML4, but nowadays we're using HTML5, so you don't need this. You may also find comments in JavaScript code, but nowadays you don't see it that often. You just write, if you want to write a comment in JavaScript, you can just do it like this, comment 1, etc. And that's typically what you might see as well. So yeah, those are the main things, and the main takeaway is that we use a script tag to add JavaScript code to a page, and it's also possible for us to write something like script source equals to file.js to add JavaScript code here. So we can do something like this, and we can also alert 1, for example, here. And when we come back here and refresh the page, we have alert 1, and that's going to happen. And when you set the source to be equal to file.js, whatever is inside the script content within the script text are ignored. So basically, when you remove this, there will be no change. And even if you add it back in, like the stuff here, alert hello world, you're not going to see the alert. Whereas if you copy and pasted this code here and you refresh the page, you'll have both alerts, and you can try that alert 1 and alert hello world both happening. So just keep that in mind, that the source, when you specify a source, the contents inside the script will be ignored. So what did we learn in this lesson? Number 1, how to add JavaScript to an HTML page, either using source or using the contents inside a script tag. We learned that it's using a script tag, and the attributes of things like type and type as well as language are almost never used these days, except in maybe very old code. Alright, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi, in this lesson we'll talk about code structuring in JavaScript. So what is code structure basically about? There are a few things. First thing to understand are statements, and these are syntax constructs and commands that perform actions. These form the building blocks of JavaScript. A semicolon in JavaScript marks the end of a statement and could be omitted when a line break exists. However, we will see some instances whereby a semicolon is not able to be omitted and is absolutely necessary. Okay, and if you come from C++ or C, you might realize that, oh, we need semicolons all the time. Okay, so it's always good to have semicolons. And my old boss used to give me a bit of flack for not putting semicolons in, and he was absolutely correct, because you need semicolons in some cases in JavaScript, and that can lead to errors. Now, the third thing to keep in mind when talking about code structuring in JavaScript is that as time goes on, programs become more and more complex. Therefore, it becomes necessary for us to add comments, which is describe what the code does and why. Alright, so these are the 3 core tenets of code structuring in JavaScript. In the next video, we'll take a look at some examples. See you then. Bye. In the previous video, we discussed the theoretical aspects of code structure in JavaScript. Now, let's go and take a look at the statements in JavaScript and get hands-on with the code as well. We've already seen some statements here. These alerts are basically statements. And in our code, we can have as many statements as we want. And statements can be separated by a semicolon, as seen here. They can also be on the same line. Go ahead and refresh this page. And you can see that the alerts still work as they did before, when maybe they were on separate lines. And you can see that the words before the script appears before the alerts are pressed, and only after the alerts are pressed and the script finishes executing does the text after the script appear. So you can see that the code is running just fine. Usually in JavaScript, we write our statements on separate lines to make the code more readable for other developers. If you want to be neat, remember to add semicolons after every line. It could be omitted in some cases, like here, and the code would still work properly, but it would just be good practice to add it as well. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi, let's discuss in depth the use of semicolons in JavaScript. It's really important to understand how to use JavaScript in depth when it comes to semicolons to really impress your coworkers. And this is a really huge deal in politics at work. Now, let's remove this hello world here. Now, you may have noticed that we typically use semicolons at the end of the line. It's also possible, of course, to use semicolons like so, on the same line, because these are separate statements. So semicolons, remember, they are supposed to mark the end of a statement. However, you can't use a semicolon like this. I mean, you can do something like this, and what will happen is you'll get alert of 1 plus 2 plus 3, which is alert 6. Let's take a look, and then we have alert 6. The key thing to understand is that a semicolon in these areas would be wrong, because these are not the ends of a statement. This thing is a statement in itself, okay? The other thing to keep in mind about semicolons is that there are situations where JavaScript fails to assume a semicolon where it is really needed, okay? And this is why it's always better to always have a semicolon. Now, I'll show you an example of this error. When we have the alert hello, we put a semicolon here, and in our next line, we put 12.for each, and we do an alert. Now, you don't have to understand exactly what's going on in this syntax here, because I have not gone through it. But all you need to understand is that it loops through this array, which if you're not familiar with, don't worry, and it does an alert on it. Now, don't worry if you don't really understand what I just said. The only thing that is really important is that this is a separate statement in JavaScript. Okay? And now, let's go ahead and refresh the page. So you see, first we alert with hello, then we alert 1 and 2. Okay? So it's executing just fine. However, if we were to remove this semicolon, now what we find is that when we refresh the page, we see hello followed by nothing. This doesn't run, okay? That's because JavaScript does not assume a semicolon before this square bracket here. Okay, so the code in the last example, in this example, is treated as a single statement like this. And this is how the JavaScript engine within the browser interprets the code. This merging is wrong, okay, because these are separate statements. This statement is intended to be executed separately. Therefore, we need to put a semicolon after the alert for this code to work perfectly. And when we put the semicolon back and we refresh the page, we see hello 1 and 2. So this is an example of where semicolons are needed in JavaScript. Therefore, I highly recommend putting semicolons between statements, even if they are separated by new lines. This rule is widely adopted by the community. Let's note once again, it is possible to leave out semicolons most of the time, but it's safer, especially for a developer to use them. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Hi. In this video, we will discuss comments in JavaScript. As time goes on, programs become more complex. It becomes necessary to add comments which describe what the code does and why. There are two kinds of comments in JavaScript. This is the first kind of comment, and it occupies one line of space. The second kind of comments are multi-line comments, okay? So how do you write it? An example with two messages. This is a multi-line comment. And here we can do alert world. Now the key to understanding it is that these are just different ways of writing out comments. One is multi-line comments, the others are single line comments, and which you use just depends on what you're trying to write. Okay, so there's a shortcut to commenting out code in JavaScript. It's either command slash or control slash, depending on which operating system you're on. Mac it's command slash, Windows is control slash. So you can just do that, highlight the text and type, press that hotkey, and the comments will automatically appear. You can also comment out multiple lines of code at once, like so. And you can uncomment it with the same command. So you can go ahead and try it out, and try it out for some of these. Of course, this should be a comment. Okay, so that's basically comments. Please don't hesitate to comment your code. Comments increase the overall code footprint, but that's not a problem at all. There are many tools which can minify the code before publishing to a production server. They remove comments so they don't appear in the working scripts. Therefore, comments do not have any negative effects on production in JavaScript at all. Later in the tutorial, there will be a chapter on code quality, which explains how we can write better comments. I'll see you then. Bye. In this lesson, we will learn about use strict. So to use strict is very simple. All we have to do is go to the top of our browser and type the words use strict in quotation marks and give it a semicolon. This enables code to work the modern way. What does this actually mean? In 2009, when ECMAScript ES5 appeared for the first time, there were new features to the language that were added, and some of the existing ones were modified. To keep the old code working, most of the modifications by ES5 are off by default. You will need to explicitly enable them with a special directive, use strict. We just did it in this case here. When we refresh the page, it works just normally. Now, we have not got to these modifications yet. We will get to them later on. Modern JavaScript supports classes and modules. We have yet to discuss them, but we will get to them. And these structures enable use strict here automatically. So we don't need to add the use strict directive if we use them. But for now, we have yet to use these advanced language structures. So we need to add use strict to our code. Okay, so therefore I say it's a welcome guest at the top of your scripts because we don't have these structures yet. Later on, when our code is all in classes and modules, we will then be free to omit using the text use script at the top of our scripts. But now we can use it. Okay, so just keep that in mind. This is just something that we should know about in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. We'll now discuss a concept present in every language, programming language in the world. And that is the concept of variables. So variables, what are variables in JavaScript? Most of the time, a JavaScript application needs to work with information. Here are two examples. Number one, an online shop. The information might include goods being sold in a shopping cart. A chat application. The information might include users, messages, and much more. Variables are used to store this information. A variable can also be thought of as a named storage for data. We can use variables to store goodies, visitors, and other data. To create a variable in JavaScript, it is very simple. Use the let keyword. So let's go ahead and do it. Remove all the code in our file.js. And now let's write message. So we just declared a variable called message. Let's go ahead and put some data into it by using the assignment operator of equals. So message equals to hello. This stores the string hello in the variable named message. The string is now saved into the memory area associated with the variable. We can access it using the variable name. So now when we alert, we can just alert message to access the data inside this variable. Now let's go ahead and refresh the page. And you see we are able to alert message. To be concise, we can also combine the variable declaration and assignment, which are these two things here, into one single line. So when we delete this, the let message equals hello, we are basically declaring a variable called message and storing the hello string inside message. We can also declare multiple variables in one line. Okay, so instead of this, we can also have let user equals to John, age equals 25, message equals hello. And the advantage is that we only wrote let once, and we are able to declare 3 variables. This might seem shorter, but I don't recommend it because it's not that readable. And for the sake of readability, I recommend you just declare it in 3 lines because it's easier to read. Okay. Now, that's pretty much it for JavaScript. Before we end this video, there's another way to declare variables called var, right? It's the older way. It's known as the older way of declaring variables in JavaScript. There are subtle differences between let and var, but they do not matter to us yet, and we will cover them in more detail later on. Just know that in general, in modern JavaScript and in the professional side, as of right now, generally speaking, var is almost never used. So in an interview, do try to use let, and also at work, do try to use the let declaration more because of the way it works in terms of scoping, but we have not yet covered it in detail yet. Alright, so we'll discuss that at some point in the future, but just keep in mind that let is the normal way to declare variables in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Now let's see other examples of how variables are used in depth. Variables is like a box for data, like we say here, a storage for data, and we can change what's in the box. We can put any value in it and change it as many times as we want. So let message, and let's change message equals to hello. And now let's reassign message equals to world and alert that message. Alright, and when we refresh the page, we see that what's alerted isn't hello but world, because the value was changed. We can also declare two variables and copy data from one into the other. So let hello equals to hello world. Let message. Now let's assign message to have the value inside hello. Now these two variables hold the same value. Now let's alert both. Refresh the page and you have hello world happening twice. This is because of how variables work. It's a storage for data. We can store anything and we can change it as many times as we want. Keep in mind that when we declare a variable twice, it will trigger an error. Okay, and you can see my syntax is highlighting here. Cannot redeclare block scope variable message. Basically, we are redeclaring the same variable, and that's wrong. So just keep that in mind when you're declaring and using variables in JavaScript. In this video, basically we learned that we can reassign data in variables very easily, and that's the whole point of variables. They're basically storage for data, and they can be changed as many times as we want. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi guys. When it comes to variable naming, there are two limitations on variable names in JavaScript. Firstly, the name must contain only letters, digits, or symbols such as a $sign and an underscore. The first character must not be a digit. Now, let's go to some examples of valid names. This is a valid name. This is also a valid name. Another thing to note is that when multiple words are used, camel case is normally used. What's also interesting, as we've mentioned, is that $sign and underscore can also be used in names. Names that are valid as well include things like let dollar equals to 1 and let underscore equals to 2. Okay, and you're actually able to alert dollar plus underscore. Before we go to the code, what do you think will happen? That's right, it's going to be a tree. I hope that's what you said anyways. Now let's take a look at some incorrect variable names. Let 1a and let my name. These are incorrect because you cannot start with a digit and you cannot contain hyphens in JavaScript code naming, in variables I mean. And you can see that there are some problems. You can inspect the page, take a look at the console, and you see invalid or unexpected token. Alright, so those are basically all there is to know about variable names in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi guys. To declare a constant unchanging variable, use const instead of let. Examples of unchanging variables could be things like passwords or usernames to databases in the code. So for example, const my birthday equals to 18.04/1966 or 1955, for example. Variables declared using const are called constants. They cannot be reassigned. An attempt to do so would cause an error. Now, if I tried to reassign my birthday to something else, I would cause an error. If I refresh this page, assignment to constant variable is the error. When a programmer is sure that a variable will never change, they can declare it with const to guarantee and clearly communicate that fact to everyone. Let's build on this information. There's a widespread practice to use constants as aliases for difficult to remember values that are known prior to execution. Such constants are named using capital letters and underscores. For instance, now let's make constants for colors in so-called web format. So we're going to create a const color underscore red, and we're going to declare it f00. Alright. And now that's how we declare a constant. Here are some benefits. Writing it this way is much easier to remember than writing it like this. It is also much easier to mistype this versus color underscore red. When reading the code, this is also much more meaningful. Color underscore red is much more meaningful than a bunch of numbers and alphabets. Being a constant just means that a variable's value never changes. But there are constants that are known prior to execution, and there are constants that are calculated in runtime during the execution, but do not change after initial assignment. This might sound very confusing, so I'll keep it simple, and all you need to really understand is that a constant is declared using const instead of let, and it's for unchanging variables. And these are typically for colors, dates maybe, and maybe usernames and passwords, etc. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Talking about variables, there's one more extremely important thing. A variable name should have a clean, obvious meaning describing the data that it stores. Variable naming is one of the most important and complex skills in programming. It's very, very important, and it reveals which code was written by a beginner versus an experienced developer. In a real project, most of the time is spent modifying and extending an existing code base rather than writing something completely separate from scratch. When we return to some code after doing something else for a while, it's much easier to find information that is well labeled, or in other words, when the variables have good names. Please do spend some time thinking about the right name for a variable before declaring it. Doing so will repay you handsomely. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi, there are 8 basic data types in JavaScript that we have to learn about. 7 of them are primitives, and 1 is non-primitive. What are primitives? Primitive data types are basically data types that are not objects. So objects are a class of complex data structures in JavaScript. The rest are basically what you see here. Okay, numbers, big integers, string, booleans, null values, undefined, and symbol for unique identifiers. And these are the key basic data types that we need to understand in JavaScript, and I'll be covering them in great detail within this section. And these are basically linked to the previous concept of variables because each of the variables must be typed. Must have a type, and it's going to be one of the types you see here. So, without further ado, let us begin in the next section, in the next video. See you then. Bye. Okay, guys, let's talk about numbers. So, let n equals to 1, 2, 3. So, n is a number like this. And the number type represents both integer and floating point numbers. So this is an integer here. It can also represent floating point numbers such as this. And for numbers, there are many operations that we can do on them, such as multiplication, or division, or subtraction, or addition or subtraction. Okay, so these are basically the numbers data type, and it's one of the simpler data types in JavaScript. There are also special numeric values such as infinity. So n can be infinity, or n can also equal to negative infinity, and n can also equals to nan. Infinity represents the mathematical infinity, whereas nan is basically a computational error, and it is the result of an incorrect or an undefined mathematical operation. Okay, nan here. Okay, capital N ending with capital N as well. Okay, and one thing to note about nan is that when we have nan, let's alert n and let's see what we get. Okay, and you see nan. nan is sticky because when you add things to nan, or you multiply nan by any number, you will still get the value of nan. Okay, so that's one thing to note. Whereas if you alert things like infinity, it will just behave as per normal. nan, third one's infinity. So these are basically the numbers data type in JavaScript, and they can be either integer or floating point. Okay, and that's the first data type that we just covered. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Now let's discuss the big int data type. Okay, so we covered the number data type, and the big int data type is for numbers that are either bigger or smaller than the n's here. So if it's bigger than 2 to the power of 53 minus 1, then we use the big int data type. If it's smaller than negative 2 to the power of 53 minus 1, we will also use the big int data type. Okay, and that's really all you need to know for the big int data type. We rarely use them, so I won't talk about them in great detail here, but it's definitely good to know. Okay, right. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Let's talk about string for strings data type. A string may have 0 or more characters. There's no separate single character type. Okay, unlike Java. Now let's focus on JavaScript. In JavaScript, there are 3 types of quotes. Right, so there are double quotes, there are single quotes, and there are backticks. Okay, there's no difference between double and single quotes. These are simple quotes, and there's practically no difference between them in JavaScript. Okay, so let's create some examples. And these are basically both strings, and they work the same. Let's take a look at how they look like. Okay, and you saw that both strings were alerted. Now, there's a third type of code that's a bit more sophisticated, and these are backticks. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to create a new string called phrase, and I'm gonna do using backticks. It looks like this. And what it does is it enables embedding of other variables within this string. Okay, so let's alert the phrase. Remember to put the semicolons where needed. And you can see that the string is can embed another hello. And the hello is from the string variable here. Let's press OK. So backticks that we saw here are extended functionality codes. They allow us to embed variables and expressions into a string by wrapping them in the dollar bracket. For example, what you see here. We can also do something like this. This is another form of string destructuring. This can only be done in backticks and not using traditional codes. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. In this lesson, let's talk about booleans. So booleans have two values, either true or false. This type is commonly used to store yes/no values. True means yes, correct. False means no, incorrect. So let's take a look at some practical implementations of this. Let name field checked equals to true. Let age field checked equals to false. Okay, and that's basically it. And we can alert these as well. Take a quick look, and it's true. So that's basically the boolean type. It's either true or false. Thank you very much. I'll see you in the next one. Hi, let's cover the null value. So the null for unknown values. So we can have a variable called age and it can be null. Null is not a reference to a non-existing object or a null pointer. It is just a special value which represents nothing or empty or value unknown. And this just means age is unknown. And that's the null value within JavaScript. It's just a special value that represents nothing. There's nothing more to it than that. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Let's talk about the undefined data type. For unassigned values, it's a standalone type that has a single value undefined. The special value of undefined also stands apart and is used to denote that a variable has not been assigned a value yet. So, for instance, if you don't assign age to anything, and you try to alert it, it will show undefined, as we see here. So that's basically how the undefined data type works in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Symbols in JavaScript are a new primitive type introduced in ES6. They are also unique identifiers which are immutable, but they are used to create unique identifiers for objects. Okay, now we should first understand what objects are before we understand symbols. So objects are in JavaScript are a collection of properties. Properties are a key value pair. All other types are primitives because their values contain only a single thing. Okay, this is very important. In contrast, objects are a collection of things. We'll discuss them in more detail in a separate lesson where we talk exclusively about objects and symbols, but I have to mention them here in this section because of completeness, because I want to talk about all the major data types. So let's give some examples of objects first. Okay, so we're going to create a constant object and we're going to give it a name and age property. So name is John, age is 30. Okay, now I'm going to give an example of symbols. So by the way, all these are the key value pairs, otherwise known as properties. And these are some symbols here. We'll talk about them more in greater detail when we finally reach a stage whereby this subject deserves the time and energy that it deserves. But for now, just keep in mind that there are two more data types called objects as well as symbols, in addition to the other primitives that we have already learned about in great detail. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Interaction. I've mentioned that JavaScript is a language that enables interactivity from the web page. Now we're gonna see some specific commands of interaction available in JavaScript, mainly alert, prompt, and confirm. Alert is one we've seen already. It shows a message and waits for the user to press OK. For prompt, this function accepts two arguments. The first is a title to show the visitor, and the other is an optional initial value. The third one is confirm. It shows a modal window with a question and two buttons, OK and cancel. The result is true if OK is pressed and false otherwise. So these are the three interactions that we will be learning about in this section on JavaScript interactions. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye. We've seen alert many times, so let's take a look at the prompt function. The prompt function in JavaScript. I'm going to go ahead and remove everything we have here. And I'm going to create a new variable called age. And I'm going to give it a prompt of how old are you. This is the title to show the visitor, and 18 is the optional initial value. Now, I'm going to then alert after the prompt, you are how many years old. So let's refresh the page. How old are you? If I don't do anything and just press OK, they'll tell me I'm 18 years old. Let's refresh the page again. Now, I can enter in a specific age. In my case, I can try 35 years old. And when I press OK, it will tell me that I am 35 years old. So that's a good example of how the prompt can work. Accepts two arguments, the title to show the visitor and an optional initial value. And it then proceeds to store the input into the prompt into this variable age. And I alert the user through the alert function. So that's basically how you can use the prompt function for interactivity in JavaScript. I'll see you in the next one. Now that we've learned about the prompt, let's learn about the confirm function. So the confirm function shows a modal window with a question and two buttons, OK and cancel. Now let's create an example in code to illustrate this concept. Let its boss equals to confirm. Are you the boss? And if you press OK, you are the boss. If not, you're not the boss. We're gonna alert boss. Alert with the boolean value of its boss. So it's gonna be true if OK is pressed and false if otherwise. If you press cancel, we're gonna alert false. Let's try again. If we press OK, we're gonna get true because we are the boss. And that's basically how you can use the confirm function in JavaScript for interactivity. Thank you. Hi. In this video, we're gonna talk about type conversions. The three most widely used type conversions are to string, to number, and to boolean. String conversion occurs when we output something. It can be performed with a string value. The conversion to string is usually obvious for primitive values. Numeric conversion occurs in math operations. It can be performed with number value. Boolean conversion occurs in logical operations. It can be performed with boolean value. So these boolean, number, string, these are the functions for doing the conversion. Alright, so let's take a look at how this can work. Okay, so we're going to create a value that's boolean initially, and I'm going to make it a true. Now I'm going to do an alert, and I'm going to use a function called typeof to check what value this variable value is. Now that when I refresh the page, I'll get boolean. Now I'm going to do a type conversion to string. Okay, and value equals to string value, right? And now it's a value, it's a string. Okay, now let's alert the type of value and also alert the value itself. When I refresh the page, I'll get boolean, that's the initial when it's here. Then I'm going to press OK, and I'm going to get string because that's the new type after the string conversion. So what I just did was string conversion. Okay, and when I press OK again, I'm going to have the next alert, and I'm going to get a true. Okay, because that's what it's been converted into. So this is basically string conversion, which occurs when we output something. It can be performed with string. The conversion to string is usually obvious for primitive values. And that's basically it for string conversion. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. In this video, we are going to talk about numeric conversions. Numeric conversions in mathematical functions happen automatically. So this 6 started out as a string, but when you divide it, it automatically gets converted to an integer of 6. The 2 also gets converted to an integer of 2. Therefore, the answer will be 3. When we refresh this page, we see 3 being outputted. We can also use the number function that we see here. Let string equals to 1, 2, 3. And now we're going to alert to check that this is indeed a string. When we refresh the page, we see that it is a string. Let's remove this. Now we're going to create a new variable called number, and we're going to utilize the number function that we saw here to convert this number into a number of 1, 2, 3. And then now we're going to alert the type of the number, and we're going to see when we do that it shows that it's at first a string, then a number. So that's how you do numeric conversion in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Now let's talk about Boolean conversions. Boolean conversions is the simplest one. So the conversion rule is that values that are intuitively empty, like 0, an empty string, null, undefined, and NaN become false. Okay, so values that are intuitively empty become false, other values become true. So let's take a look. Alert boolean 1, and this will be true. Alert boolean 0 is false. Alert hello is true. Alert boolean empty string is false. And these are the main examples that we have. Okay, and let's take a quick look here. True, false, true, false. So it's exactly what we expected based on what we saw here. This has been Boolean conversion, and these are the 3 type conversions that we can do in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. In JavaScript, we have the following operators: addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, remainder, and exponentiation. Let's take a look at some examples. So we can alert 1 plus 2, and that should give the result of 3. There you have it, right? And we can also do subtraction, so we can have 10 minus 5, which should give the answer of 5. We also have multiplication, 10 times 1 times 2, which is going to give 2. And we also have division, say 10 divided by 2, which should give 5, right? So that's how it works. For remainder, how it works is that it's not actually related to percentages. It's the remainder of the target integer division of a by b. So 10 divided by 2, the remainder is 0, but 10 divided by 3, the remainder is 1. And that's what you should get. Okay? For exponentiation, the way it works is say we do 2 exponentiation, it's 2 to the power of 5, right? So this is 2 to the power of 5. Other examples are, say, 10 to the power of 3, which is 10 times 10 times 10, right? So we can do an alert for that. So 2 to the power of 5 is 32, so we're gonna do 2 to the power of 5, and let's see, we should get 32, and that's it. So these are the 6 core operators that we can use in JavaScript on numbers to perform mathematics. Thank you. In addition to the arithmetics that are possible in JavaScript, we also have operators that can do other things. So the plus operator can sum strings as well. So can concatenate strings. So I'll give you an example. So S can be my string, and they'll concatenate through this plus sign. And now we're gonna alert S and see how it goes, and you'll get my string, right? And that's how it works. You'll see some other examples. So if you want to concatenate a string with integers, you can do that as well, and you'll just alert that out. Okay. So what's going on? We alerted my string. We alerted 1, 2, 2, because 1 becomes is a string. Then this gets added to the string 2 and 2. This becomes a 3, and it gets added to the string of 2, so it becomes a string. Okay. So basically, the key to understanding it is whenever there's an operand that's a string, basically what happens is that the entire thing gets treated as strings. Okay. So that's basically how another way that the JavaScript operators can work. Thank you. Hi, let's look at comparisons in JavaScript. Okay, a few things to note. These are some possible comparisons. It's quite simple. The idea is boolean is the result returned from these comparisons, and we will look at some examples. So this is greater than, lesser than, greater, less than, or equals, and this is the equality, and the notation is not equal. This is not equal. Okay, so these are what these operators mean. So what they do is that they return true or false. Okay, so 2 greater than 1 will be true, 2 equals to 1 will be false, 2 does not equals to 1 will be true. So true, false, true. That's exactly what we expected. So these are basically comparisons in JavaScript, and that's how things work. Thank you so much. Hi, let's leverage on our understanding of comparisons like we saw here to understand if-else statements in JavaScript. So for year, we have the prompt that will save the year, and this is the value. Hang on a second. This is the default string if nothing is entered in, and if the year equates to 2015 and this returns true, then we alert you are right. If not, we alert you are wrong. Okay, so let's test it out. 2015, we get you are right. If you put 20 something, you are wrong. So basically this returns true, and if it is true, we alert you are right. So that's how we can write if-else statements in JavaScript. Now we will look at other examples to further build on this understanding in further videos. See you then. Bye. Hi, let's build on our understanding of if-else statements in JavaScript. So instead of this, we are going to make it a little bit complicated. If year is lesser than 2015, we are going to give too early. Else if it is greater than 2015, we're going to put too late. Else we're going to give exactly. So what's going on here? We now have multiple conditions that can work. And with this, we have to utilize another feature of the if-else block, which is the else-if statement. So else-if in JavaScript can be used for secondary conditionals that we want to implement. So if this returns true or this returns true, these blocks of code will execute. So let's try it out. If I put 2015, exactly. But if I put 21, it's too early. If I put 3000, it's too late. So you can see that this code block is working properly. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi. So I'm going to teach you a slightly more complex version of JavaScript syntax, okay? And this is not really necessary, but you will see it in industry quite a bit, but you know, it's not a compulsory thing to learn. So we're going to create a new variable called accessAllowed with an age variable that comes from the prompt how old are you. Okay, and we're going to write a normal conditional like we learned previously. If age equals greater than 18, accessAllowed. Else accessAllowed is false. Okay, and we'll do an alert of accessAllowed. So I'm going to refresh the page. If I'm 16, false. If I'm say 30, true. Excellent. So now instead of writing it this way, we're going to write it in another way, okay, which is the question mark syntax. Okay, so the way the question mark syntax works is let result equals to condition, and if the condition is true, this value happens. If not, this value happens. So this is like a sort of advanced syntax, I guess, but you don't need to know it for now. But it's not that advanced, and I'm sure you can understand it. So the way we would do it is like this. So accessAllowed would therefore be age greater than 18, true or false. So if this returns true, then we give value 1, which is true. If not, we give value 2. So let's try refreshing the page. So let's say we are 10, false. If we are more than 18, true. Fantastic. So it's working absolutely correctly. And by the way, if we are 18, which means we are not greater than 18, it's still false, which is working absolutely correctly. We can also remove this and just declare the variable here directly and assign it. Okay, so you can see it's working. If we enter nothing, then we're not, but if we enter 19, it is true. Alright, so that's how the question mark syntax works. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi, so we learned the question mark syntax. Now, you may have realized that for our previous question mark syntax, we only had one condition. We can also have multiple conditions, of course, and we can do that. So we can do, instead of accessAllowed, let's do a message. And if the age is less than 3, hi baby. So we're gonna have, if it's 1 or 2 or 0 or negative, which of course does not make sense, but we go, if it's less than 3, then we'll, and this is true basically, then we return this value. Else, we'll run another if-else conditional. Okay, so yeah, I think this works. Age lesser than 18, then we'll go with hello. So it's between 3 and 18, and then we'll do another age less than 100, greetings. And if not, that means you're 100 and older, we'll return this finally. What an unusual age. Okay, so and now we'll just alert the message. So let's put say 98, and it will go greetings. Put 101, what an unusual age. 16, we'll get hello. Is that correct? Yeah, hello, greetings, what an unusual age. Now we'll put 2, hi baby. So those are the ways that this can work. If I was to rewrite this in conditional state format, I would have a let message, and then if age is lesser than 3, we'll have message equals to hi baby. Else if age is less than 18, we'll have message. Oh, by the way, remember to format the code properly. Else if age is less than 100, we'll get greetings, else what an unusual age. So this is basically the same as this, exactly the same, works exactly the same way. This is just another way of writing it that looks a little nicer, but arguably harder to understand. If you're a beginner, it may be more challenging to understand this, but basically this is what is executed if this condition isn't true. This is what's executed if this condition isn't true, and this is what's executed if this condition isn't true. Alright, so that's it really for the multiple question marks use in JavaScript. To be honest, you probably don't have to concern yourself so much with this. You do see it maybe quite a bit if you work professionally in JavaScript, but even if you don't really use it, it's probably okay. It's more for showing off, if you want me to be honest, or if you want my opinion. But anyways, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Hi guys, building on our understanding of if-else statements, now we will learn about logical operators in JavaScript. So there are a few key ones, and, or, and not, and let's go ahead and get to it. So let's talk about or first, okay? So we're gonna do some alerts of true, true, it's false, true, true, false, and false, false. Now this uses the or operator here. How does it work? If something is true or it's true, it returns true. However, if it's false or it's true as well, because it's either or. If it's true or false, it's true. If it's false or false, it's false. Right? Because if both false is false, if either is true, it's true. Okay? So that's why this outcome makes sense. Another way of thinking about it is that or returns the first truthy value or the last one if no truthy value is found. Okay? So the last value is here false, but if there is one single true, the whole thing is true. So that's how or works. Thank you. Hi guys, so now that we know about or operators, let's learn about and operators in JavaScript. So we'll have true, and that is true. False and true is false, true and false is false, and false is false. Now, why is this? Okay, both are true and both are false, they'll be either true or false. But for and, it's very different from or, because when either of these are true, then it will be, when either of these are false, then it will be false, because and implies or requires that both conditions be true. Okay, so I'll give you another concrete example in if-else statement. So let hour equals to 12, let minute equals to 30. If hour equals to 12 and minute equals to 30, alert the time is 12:30. Okay, so that's basically how this thing works, because the idea is that for the time to be 12:30, both the hour and minute need to be equal to 12 and 30, so and is suitable to be used because you want both to be returning true. So that's it for and. Basically, another way to think about and is and finds the first falsy value or the last value if none were found. So the moment you find one single false in the conditional statement, then you will return that. Okay? Hi, let's now learn about the not operator. So boolean not operator is represented with an exclamation sign, as we saw here. Now, alert not true equals to false, and alert not 0 equals to true. Now, in actual fact, true will return true, 0 will return false. But the inverse of these boolean values are what's being returned when you use the exclamation mark. So the exclamation sign just returns the inverse value, and that's really it. Okay, so if you use the exclamation sign 2 times, what you will get is false, because you are inversing the inverse. So a double exclamation mark, the first exclamation mark makes it a false, the second one makes it a true. So let's take a quick refresh and we'll see true and true. Okay, we'll have a lot of true and false because I didn't remove the ones at the top, but let's go ahead and comment these out for a second, and let's refresh the page. We should get 2 falses. we should get true and false. Yes, this will be a true because we're using double boolean not operators. If it was 1 being used, this would be false and this would be true, because you're inverting the boolean effectively. And we use this whenever we want to invert the boolean of a particular condition. Thank you. Hi guys, in this video we will cover a new operator called the nullish coalescing operator. So this is like sort of advanced again. To me it's just showboating, but it does make the syntax look nicer, especially when the code can be very long and complicated sometimes, or a lot of times in fact. So we'll do an alert of user and anonymous. Okay, so what the nullish coalescing operator does is, if this is undefined or null, then this will be returned. So if I put here nothing like this, it will be anonymous. Okay, anonymous. Alright, okay, let me comment out these stuff here and let me refresh. Okay, anonymous. But if I put any name inside user, let's say John, let's say anybody, it doesn't matter, it doesn't need to be John. When we refresh the page, it will be that name. Okay, so that's basically how the nullish coalescing operator works. Another example, I guess I can try to give another example. What we can do is maybe we can try let first name equals to null, let last name equals to null, alert first name last name anonymous. Since both are null, this will be anonymous. Okay, I'll remove this because we don't need it anymore, and it's anonymous. But the second I put something in one of these, Smith for example, refresh the page, I get Smith. So it just chooses the first truthy value. So if I change this to John, it should give John, and that's what the nullish coalescing operator does. It just it gets basically the first defined value in a chain of all operations. Okay, and that's basically how it works. If you see this, there's nothing complicated. Do not be intimidated by it at all. There is no need to be. That's it. Okay, thank you so much. Let's learn about loops in JavaScript. Okay, so for loops, we'll start with the while loop. Okay, this is for repeating actions in code. In programming, one of the biggest things is that we don't have to do things manually ourselves. A lot of the things we need to do, which are repeated, can be automated, and loops are a great way to do that. There are two kinds of loops, so let's focus on while loops first. So we're first going to define I. So this is sort of like a counter, and while I is less than 10, what we're going to do is we're going to do alerts, okay, of I. But 10 is a lot, so let's just do 3. So you'll go from 0, 1, 2, and then you'll increment I while I is less than 3, and then alert I, and then increment it. So I will go from 0 to 2 basically. So let's see, 0, 1, 2, and that's it. So that's how the while loop basically works. What happens here is that the I just changes in value. Okay, there's another way to write this. Okay, but let's first start with I equals to 3, and while I. So while I means while this returns a true value. Okay, and let's say that, and you know that when I is 0, it gives a false. Yep, and then when it's 1, 2, and 3, it returns true. Okay, so I minus minus. Right, let's take a look. 3, 2, 1, and then you get nothing. Okay, and what you can do as well is, instead of writing it this way, you can do alert I minus minus, and you will alert the I, and then the minus minus will happen, the decrementing will happen later on. So you get 3, 2, 1. So let's take a look. 3, 2, and 1. Okay, so that's pretty much it really for while loops in JavaScript, and you should be able to use loops now. Thank you. We've looked at the while loop, so now let's look at the for loop. Okay, it's for when you know how many times you want to loop. It is slightly more complex, but it's more commonly used. Okay, so you will actually see for loops a lot more. Okay, so for let I equals 0, I less than 10, we can console log it, and now we'll actually also learn to use the console. And you see nothing here, but if you right click inspect and you go to the console, you'll see these numbers here. If we adjust this to 4, we'll get 0, 1, 2, and 3. So I hope you can see it clearly. It's also in your console. Okay, so that's basically how it works. What happens is this, at the start I equals to 0, there's this variable here. At the end of every code execution block, it increments and it checks this if it's less than 4. Okay, so it's like an if statement, and it keeps checking and incrementing until it is at 4, and then that's when the loop terminates. So that's basically how for loops work effectively. Okay, generally speaking, you should use the syntax like this most of the time. There are ways whereby you can do some funny stuff like this. Okay, and like this, I believe. Yeah, if you just define I, and you can keep going on and on forever. Okay, but you'll just repeat on and on. Then if I equals to 2, wait, sorry, give me a second. Terminate the loop, and if I equals to 2, break. Okay, now we haven't even gotten to break yet. Okay, I think there's a slight issue. Okay, but the point I'm trying to make is that you typically shouldn't be trying to exclude the starting and ending parts of the for loop. There should always be 3 parts to the condition: the start, the terminating condition, and the incrementer. Okay, because that's just how it's used, and there's really no point in trying to sidestep it for some syntactic reasons. Alright, so that's the for loop, or at least that's the start of it. We will discuss this in more detail very soon. So I'll go ahead and see you when we discuss it. Thank you so much. Hi, so now we'll talk about continue and break in statements in the for loop. Okay, so what's going on is we're going to loop from 0 to 9, and what we're going to do is we are going to have a few conditionals. Okay, what we're going to do here is we are going to use continue if I equals to 2, and console log 2 is my favorite number, continue, so the rest of this code block doesn't get executed. So continue, when you want to continue to the next iteration, so the rest of the code block within the current iteration doesn't iterate. Break is when you want to break out of the loop, so the loop is stopped when I equals to 5. So let's see what happens when we refresh the page. Nothing, but we have to look at the console, right? And we see number 0, number 1, 2 is my favorite number, but number 2 is not console log. Number 3, number 4, and finally stopping the loop. Okay, which is what happens at I equals to 5, and the rest of the thing doesn't get executed as well. So that is pretty much it for the continue and break statements in the for loop. The continue statements are for when we want to continue to the next iteration, and the break statement is for when we want to break out of the loop. And when we use them in the for loop, we are able to achieve something pretty interesting like what we see here. Thank you. Now let's discuss a very important concept in switch statements. Now, switch statements are not that important if you just only do personal projects, in my opinion, but it's quite important if you're going to work in industry because it can replace multiple if checks to make code more readable. That's a huge benefit in reality. So I'll give you an example of an if-else statement first. Okay, so and we'll then rewrite it into with switch statements. Okay, so let a equals to prompt plus a. All right, so what's a? Okay, so if a is 0, we alert 0. If a equals to 1, we alert 1. If a equals to 2 or 3, we'll alert 2, 3. Okay, so let's refresh the page. If it's 2, then we get 2, 3. If we put 0, we get 0. If we put 1, we get 1. Okay. Now, we now have to rewrite the code with a switch statement, and this will make the code a lot more readable. We don't need this, and we're gonna comment this out. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have a switch a case 0, alert 0, break. Okay, case 1, alert 1, and break. We'll have case 2, case 3, and these two cases have the same one, so now you just alert 2, 3. So you can see it looks a lot neater because there are like clear levels of switches and cases. So this is one of the huge advantages of using switch, because we can group the cases together in a more neat way, and we can also just have different cases for each thing, right? So there's another thing. There are other things to do with switch statements that we'll continue to talk about, but this is a good introduction and a good segue for us to transition to the next lesson. So I'll see you then. Bye. Hi there. So now let's look at some more examples of switch. Okay, so we'll have let a equals to 2 plus 2, and we'll do a switch on a. And now we'll do case 3, too small, case and break. Case 4, alert exactly. So the break is very important so that we don't allow the switch to enter other cases. Okay, break. And now we'll have a case 5, too big, and break. And now a default, which happens, I don't know such values. Okay, so what happens here? Okay, so switch starts to compare a from the first case, that is 3, the match fails. Case 4, that's a match. So the execution starts from case 4 until the nearest break. If there is no break, then the execution continues with the next case without any checks. Okay, so in this case, when we refresh the page, we should just get exactly. Okay, but if we omit the breaks, we will get exactly too large, and then the default case, which is when no case executes, the default case will always execute. So you're gonna get exactly, too large, and I don't know such values. Okay, because there was no break, so all these cases were allowed to execute. Okay, so cases we've seen before, but they can also be grouped. Okay, so let's do a break here, and now we'll group case 3 and case 5 together, and we'll go and alert, and we're going to put here wrong, and we're going to break. So now let's refresh the page exactly, but if we change this to say 3, we're going to get wrong, and if we change this to say 10, we're gonna get I don't know such values, because this is the default, so this is for all other cases. You can think of it like the else in an if-else statement. Now I just want to emphasize one more thing for switch statements, and that is something that we will cover in the next video, so stay tuned for that lesson. But in this lesson, we learned about the importance of the default case, as well as how we can group different cases together in a switch statement. Thank you so much. Hi, in this video, I want to emphasize something very important about switch statements, and that is the idea that type matters in switch statements. Okay? values must be of the same type to match because the equality check is always strict. Okay, so let's give an example of this. Okay, so let's go let arg equals to prompt, enter a value, and let's switch on that argument. Case 0, case 1 will be grouped together, 1 or 0, and then we break. Then we have case 2, and then we alert 2 and we break. Now we have case 3, but now remember the first 3 were strings. Okay, now we have case 2, and now we have the alert never executes, break. This will never execute because this is not equal strictly to the prompt that was given here, because the value entered are strings. Then we'll have a default case, which is an unknown value. So when we go 1, 1 or 0, when we put 2, 2. But when we put 3, an unknown value. Why? Because this never executes. Why does it never execute? One simple reason. These are strings. The values must be of the same type to match. What you entered in was a string. Therefore, you will need these cases to match the strings for these alerts to run. But as that did not happen, this default ran instead. Even when it's 3, it's a string. So what actually was entered, arg was in fact a string. So therefore, this never executed. It's as simple as that. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you. Bye. Hi guys. We will learn about functions in JavaScript in this video. We have already seen functions like alert, prompt, console log, etc. But now we can also create functions ourselves. So how do we create functions ourselves? We can create a function called showMessage, and it will do the alert hello everyone. And we can call this function by showMessage. So what this does is it calls the function, runs it, and invokes the function. Okay, say whatever you want. Basically, this enables the function to be ran. So let's refresh the page, and you see the function was ran. So we can also run it 2 times with another showMessage. When we refresh, oh, hello everyone happens twice. So that's exactly what goes on when we create and declare when we create a function and invoke it. Thank you. Now let's learn about local variables in JavaScript functions. A variable declared inside a function is only visible inside that function. Now what does this mean exactly? So let's go back to our function showMessage. Now let message equals to hello I'm JavaScript. It's a local variable and we alert that message. Let's call it showMessage and let's run it. Hello I'm JavaScript. This was a local variable. Keep in mind, this variable is only visible inside this function. When we alert message, there will be an error because the variable here is local to the function. And there's an error here, message is not defined. That's because this variable is local and only visible inside the function. Thank you. Now that we've discussed local variables, we'll talk about outer variables. So a function can access outer variables. Okay, so let's create an outer variable here called username. Hello. Okay, and to keep things simple, we'll just add username here and alert message. Okay, and we'll just remove this because it gives an error. Let's refresh the page. See, hello John. In addition, not only does it have full access to the outer variable, it is also able to modify the outer variable. So, can also modify outer variable. Okay, let's be specific here. Okay, so what we can do is we can have username equals to Bob, so it changed the outer variable. And now what we can do is we can alert the message, and what we can do is we can alert the username, so it's drawn before the function call. We can show message, call the function, and then alert the username again, and now it's Bob. Okay, and what we can do is we can remove this alert and remove the message as well. Okay, and let's refresh the page. So we have John, then Bob, which makes a lot of sense because the function modifies the variable, and then the show message, the username that was alerted would then change as a result. So that's how functions can access and modify outer variables. Thank you so much. Hi guys, now let's learn about function parameters. So we can pass arbitrary data into functions. So for instance, for show message, we can have say hello. Oh, okay, sorry, not this function. Show message, and we can pass in two arguments, who it's from and what the text is, and we can do an alert from plus colon space text string concatenation. So let's call this function show message and hello, and we should get this in the browser. When we refresh the page, that is what happens. And hello, and what's up, and hello, and what's up. So that's how we can basically pass custom arbitrary data into functions. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye. Hi, so now let's discuss function return values. In functions, we should aim to return values. So functions could return values in JavaScript, and let's see how it can be done, right? So we're going to create a function called calculate age. Okay, so 2023 minus year of birth, return age. Okay, so, and we're going to use a let here. Then age will equals to calculate age 1990, for example, and then we're going to alert age. We can also just shove this function call inside the alert, so we can just calculate age here directly, and let's take a quick look, and it says 33. That's because the value being returned is what's alerted. So that's how we can return values in JavaScript. Okay, so other more complicated ways to return value, for instance, is we can do something like another function called check age. If age is greater than 18, we can return true, else we can have return confirm, do you have permission from your parents, and we can, how old are you, and then we can do a check age. Okay, so let's remove the calculate age function and refresh this, and if you put say 20, it's fine, but if you put 10, do you have permission from your parents? Okay, so we can also have multiple return values moderated by if-else statements, and these are basically just values that are returned, or function calls that are executed again. Okay, so that's returning values from functions. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye. Now we're going to learn about another concept called arrow functions. And arrow functions are another way to write a function. So we're going to define a variable called sum, and these are the arguments, and this is what's being returned. Okay, another way to write it is let sum, or function sum, ab, alright, and return a plus b. Let's comment this out as well. Okay, so there's no let here, this is just function sum a plus b, and that's what you return. So it's basically the same thing. The key difference is that this is shorter, okay, but they function the same way. And you may see arrow functions quite a bit, depending on which code base you're working on. So sum 1, 2, And let's take a quick look. 3. So that's the sum function working correctly. So in this video, we learned about arrow functions, which is just another way to write functions in JavaScript. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.